let's start with a piece of news from our neighbors up north. CRTC, which is, of course, a Canadian media body. Registration for podcasts and streaming companies draws criticism. So you may have heard that the next genius move out of the Canadian government, this from the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, is that online streaming and podcasting services operating in Canada with 10 million or more in annual revenue in their country will have to register with that government body by November 28th of this year. Registration involves providing the legal name of a company, its address, its telephone number and email, and what type of services it offers. In its decision released Friday, the CRTC called a registration a, quote, very light burden. University of Ottawa law professor Michael Geist, the Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law, describes the information being collected as limited, but said he suspects there is more to come from the CRTC. I think a lot of people take a look at this and feel it's the thin edge of the wedge and that more regulation is on the way, said Geist in an interview with CBC News. It's a perspective echoed by Canadian podcaster Jesse Brown, publisher of Canadaland, who told CBC News that Friday's announcement by the CRTC is concerning to him. What they're signaling is we're going to be regulating the space, but we're not telling you how. That makes it hard, very hard, he said. Tell me about it. That's how we feel here every time we go in the air. The CRTC said it doesn't...
I'm a little perturbed that our audience is lagging on the super chat so that we don't actually qualify for this registration.
Yeah, well, that's what I was also going to say, folks.
You all really need to step up your game.
The CRTC said it does not expect podcasters who host their content on their own websites or who make it available on subscription platforms would be required to register because their annual revenues in most likelihood would be below the proposed exemption threshold of $10 million. Now, of course, look, we, just as our friends at Hardlands Media and RBN and, all kinds of channels that are, on the smaller side of things, we all have censorship issues as related to like bots crawling around and picking up keywords and clips and things like that. And then you get a limited monetization on a video, or in the worst case, they'll take it down, right? But most of the time, if you're the Canadian government, you're not going to really be threatened in a big way by a podcast doing less than $10 million a year, right? Like the idea that they're targeting bigger podcasts, that just means they're going to go after bigger threats, right? Because generally you're not really a threat to power unless people fucking listen to you. And that's where you get the money from, right? Now, however, it goes on. A larger company such as Spotify may need to register. Spotify told the CRTC during public hearings in July that it wanted to see podcasts exempted from regulation due to the economic strain the podcasting industry is currently experiencing. Now, I just want to...
you mean it wasn't a good idea to give $1 billion to Meghan Markle?
Right, yes, it puts a pinch on you. Yeah, exactly. I just want to go to here because one of the things that this is going to do is it's going to bring podcast platforms under this bill, C11. So controversial bill C11 to regulate online streaming becomes law. So this is the bill now that these podcast platforms are now going to be brought under. So this is from April, right? So the first version of this bill passed, 6 months ago now. After years of debate, the Senate gave its final approval Thursday to Bill C11, also known as the Online Streaming Act. It received royal assent shortly after. The bill makes changes to Canada's Broadcasting Act. The legislation requires streaming services like Netflix and Spotify to pay to support Canadian media content like music and TV shows. It also requires the platforms to promote Canadian content. Specifically, the bill says online undertakings shall clearly promote and recommend Canadian programming in both official languages as well as Indigenous languages. Now, this is how they're going to get you, okay? This is how they're going to do it, just like they do it here. They don't come down, right? There's not an order from on high in the offices of the government that says, Joe Rogan, off. What they're going to say is, now that you guys are brought under this act and you are compelled by law to promote Canadian content in Canadian language, we have to have a talk with you, Spotify, because those providers who you are obligated to promote, they don't want to have anything to do with a guy like Joe Rogan. And so if you want to keep broadcasting here, you might have to make things right with us by either bringing him to heel, or in Joe Rogan's case, he would definitely tell Canada, go get your fucking shine box. He doesn't need that market, right? But that's how they would do it. They would do it the same way they do it here. Not by decree, but by perverting the incentives, by saying, hey, if you want to be on our platforms, you're going to have to promote this content. And if they think that the stuff on your platform is problematic, then they're going to compel you to rectify that. So that's how I think this is going to happen. That's why that Bill C-11 is sort of integral to all of this.
Yeah, the project I didn't get to before I left was my Canada as Aldous Huxley-esque vision of more liberal kind of dystopia. And wow, I'm kind of glad I didn't do it before I left, because now I can incorporate this into it. Yeah, Canada is really leading the way towards what a kind of neoliberal fascism looks like, which is kind of funny because, when South Park did the Blame Canada thing, the joke played because Canada was always so innocuous, right? Like, that's what was funny about it. The Canadians, they're so well governed and innocent. And, everybody wanted to flee there if this or that person became president. I mean, I guess the libs still want to go there if Trump gets reelected. But genuine leftists, I mean, that's a far worse option. I mean, honestly, because I've talked about going up to Buffalo. And one of the advantages when I was first talking about it, I was like, yeah, you can escape into Canada. Now I'm like, shit, I don't even know if I should go shopping in Canada with the stuff I say online. I could get arrested over there.
Well, no, it's a serious point. I mean, it's seriously something to think about, because I think about it sometimes too. We were on the sort of Obama Medicaid healthcare plan for years. And then when my wife got a job at a hospital, she qualified for, employer-based healthcare, which is private healthcare. And so we had to take it because once you qualify for it, you have to take it. And back when we had the government plan, the Medicaid plan, everything was free. Everything. There were no copays, no deductibles. Prescriptions were like 20 cents a piece or something like that, just crazy low. Now that we're on the, private plan, you get significant copays. My kid just spent 3 days in the hospital. I mean, I think the deductible on that's $2,500 or $5,000. So we're going to get at least a bill that big at some point for that hospital stay. Patreon.com/DueDissidence. You can go help us out there, please. Thank you very much. So I think a lot of times I'm thinking, wow, maybe we should just go to Canada where all this is taken care of, like a civilized place. But then, shit like this makes you think, well, if I moved to Canada, would we be able to do what we do? Like this is now half my job now is doing this show. Like, would I be able to work in this capacity there? It makes you think. And look, everything is a trade-off.
England too.
England too. Of course.
The only reason we're not having this to this extent here, and obviously we've covered it a lot, they are trying to find ways around the First Amendment to censor. But in the end, we still have the First Amendment, and these countries don't have that. And I know whenever we talk about this regarding Canada, we'll have some Canadians that'll start talking about what they do have. Clearly, it's not the same fucking thing, given some of what's gone on there, which would get struck down in courts in 5 minutes in the United States if you tried to do it. So whatever you have, your charter, your version of a constitution, clearly does not have the kinds of robust protections for speech that we have in the United States. Whatever its failings, when you see cases, I mean, we don't cover all of them because it would be all we cover, because it's like a constant litany of insanity in England. In addition, you've had. I wanted to cover this actually, but we had just covered another story dealing with this in England. They had a woman for taking a picture of a sign that said "Women are women." They tracked her down from cameras. They found her house. The fucking police came to her house to talk to her about this. That is terrifying. That is a terrifying concept. So Canada seems to be kind of keeping pace with that, with the truckers, with the debanking. I mean, it's really, when you look at what's happening in Canada, in a lot of respects, it's what these Democrats, frankly, would like to see here.
Of
It's what
course.
people like AOC, ironically enough, given that a lot of us, including myself, supported her at one time. It's what they want, right? It's deplatforming works. So what are you talking about? What are you supporting when you say something like that? They want a regime like what's happening in Canada.
Please clap.